did you know hidden deep in the caves of Hoth is a Wampa eating a dead Tauntaun just like in episode 5? This cave is located on the right side of the Twilight map in Battlefront 1, and with the help of a teammate, you can spawn past the barrier to see the Wampa up close. It even looks at you if it gets shot. But up until the Twilight map, Wampas only appeared from afar chasing down a herd of Tauntauns, or as the map's background sounds, and were only ever playable in the original Battlefront 2's Hunt mode, which was a lot of fun commanding a squad of these things and wreaking havoc across the very well armed rebel base. Since then, everyone's been aching to see them make a return to the series as a playable unit, kinda like what happened with Ewok Hunt. Speaking of which, Endor also has some hidden creatures scattered around. On the forest floor near some logs in the reboot, you can find these lizard snake things called Tempters. Apparently, this creature was an early design from Ralph McQuarrie that didn't make it in the films. The red Geejaws and other types of birds are scattered around the entire map, while the Gorax, which was also seen in early concept art, isn't specifically shown but can be heard in this spooky and dark cave that so happens to have man-eating bugs, which is actually a reference to the Gorax lair seen in the Ewok TV special Carnival of Courage that showed off many native inhabitants of Endor that are slowly becoming canon again. And it goes without saying that Ewoks are in all Battlefront games, but in both cases they were only playable in the sequels, either as the Rebel reinforcements or in the original's Hunt mode. Being the only unit that uses arrows, rocks, a pouch of whisties that glow when the ability recharges, wooden spears, and of course the trumpet. Plus, their small treetop huts are an iconic staple of the map across the whole franchise, but the reboot's Battlefront 1 also includes these lakeside huts that weren't used in the films, but were seen in early concept art of the planet. In fact, there's also a door in Echo Base with this sign on it that C-3PO actually ripped off in a deleted scene of episode 5, which had a Wampa inside that managed to escape and terrorize the Rebel base. Now, some people think that George Lucas wrote the Wampa scarring Luke's face scene in because of how bad his actor's real-world car accident was, but Mark Hamill said he only fractured his nose and cheekbone, which DICE did change for skins episode 5 and beyond. Luke's downed snowspeeder also makes an appearance in Battlefront 1, as well as the AT-AT he destroyed with the visible hole from his lightsaber and the pulse bomb explosion. Plus, all Battlefront games include the Millennium Falcon in the hangar of Echo Base, as well as the ion cannon somewhere in the map, and the shield generator, but unlike in the reboot where it's just a reference to the films, the shield generator is actually a spawnable base for the rebels that can be destroyed in both original games. But many people don't know that this also goes for the shield bunker on Endor. Doing so will take away the command post as well, but for some reason it only works in Battlefront 1 even though the base still has a special icon next to the regular command post in the sequel. Plus, although it does take a long time, both the shield generator and bunker can be repaired after they've been destroyed. You can also do this in Hunt mode, which will add another spawn for the rebels to use against the Wampas, which is pretty cool, but they still randomly run after you, making the process that much more frustrating, so jump on the generator to be safe. It also doesn't help that the audio is broken and constantly playing these sounds on repeat. But you probably didn't know that the outpost bases in Hoth were destroyable in the beta of Battlefront 1. Each had that special icon representing it as a destructible command post, but this never made it in the final version. This meant that the Empire's only spawn was the AT-AT, while the closest base was neutral. Interestingly, this map layout was carried over to Battlefront 2's campaign mission, but with capturing other outposts instead of destroying them. Plus, Endor's beta map had some wired traps that would stop speeder bikes from driving, as well as these cool log traps in the early versions of Battlefront 2 that sadly were also cut out for some reason, all of which weren't actually shown in episode 6, so pretty cool. And if you look at the preview screen of Endor, it does show the beta version of the map, but it isn't too different to the one we got in the final release. This goes for Hoth as well, although the minimap does show a secret room behind this wall, but when I checked underneath there wasn't anything, so maybe it was from earlier versions. Speaking of which, You probably didn't notice that Battlefront 1 had these cool walkways between bases that led to different areas of the map, including straight outside of the snowy hills. But most of these were completely blocked off in the sequel because apparently not much players used them. The main tunnel of Echo Base was kept, but the command post was removed, keeping the action more centered outside in the snowy plains. But the Rebel stronghold mentioned earlier was added in Battlefront 2 because of the campaign mission's final objective, where the Empire orbital strikes the Rebel frigate before it can escape like the other shuttles. Interestingly, this area is also blocked off by rubble in instant action, but you can still access it by going out of bounds, though for some reason nothing's there unlike in other game modes. Probably because HVV from the Classic Collection uses the campaign version of the map just without the mission objectives. Speaking of which, you probably didn't notice that Luke is the only character that changes his appearance depending on the planet. Although there was a farm boy costume cut from the game, we did get his pilot jumpsuit on Hoth, but for some reason this doesn't change in the Classic Collection's HVV mode, keeping his episode 6 appearance. Interestingly, Battlefront 1 also has this costume, but it doesn't actually use Luke's face, instead uses the same model as the Rebel engineer with just a lightsaber. At least the Wookiee warrior gets a snow variant, which is pretty cool. Battlefront's reboot also had the original trilogy hero skins changed for Hoth. Although Luke doesn't get his jumpsuit, this skin from the beginning of episode 5 does suit him way more. This also happens on Endor for Princess Leia, but Han Solo didn't get his Forest Moon appearance until later in the sequel, which looks so amazing. Endor is also one of the few planets where stormtroopers use their plain white appearance, another being the Death Star, which if you look up at the sky in all Battlefront games can be seen like in episode 6. Speaking of which, one of the most hidden Easter eggs in the game is an Ewok hunt playing as the Empire, where you have to find and shoot around 5 pies scattered around the map. Doing this will cause the screen to shake, opening the doors of a hidden bunker with a control panel inside. But instead of sending a distress beacon to the capital ship, it plays the Star Wars theme. You probably noticed these traps scattered around Endor. To my knowledge, you can't actually use any of them in the reboot, but these logs set up in the original games do work on AT-STs like in episode 6. Although they automatically activate when an AT-ST walks through, you can disable the trap by dealing heavy damage beforehand. Though, watch out because it will kill even rebels who stole enemy vehicles. Plus, only AI rebel pilots and Ewoks can repair the logs for some reason. Shout out to User Prognosis for letting me know about this and some other facts in this video. Funny enough, these traps weren't actually built for the Empire's invasion, rather they were already set up for Goraxes mentioned earlier, which can grow to similar heights as the AT-ST. You can actually solo the AT-AT in Battlefront 1 by switching between the grappling cable and the pilot seat. In fact, the vehicles in Hoth have some interesting interactions, like being able to land on top of the AT-AT, as well as this funny glitch that used to happen in older versions, but I do think this is only on console. The AT-STs, to my knowledge, can't have a cable latched onto them, but you probably didn't know that they were also seen in the back shots of episode 5. Plus, EA's Battlefront 2 also introduced Tauntauns, which are a cool addition, since not only can you attack with them, but you can also shoot and jump over stuff, which makes them really fun to ride. Tauntauns in the original were also very fast, which can help you glitch through walls. Speaking of which, there's a few places around the map to do so, usually behind some boxes or in a specific corner of the snow tunnels as shown. One of the most common is through the ceiling of Echo Base, but since it doesn't have too many places to stand on, falling through is pretty easy. But if you manage to stay on long enough and park your Tauntaun, teammates will try clipping through the wall to ride it, which is pretty funny. Going out of bounds of Hoth also has the same standard floor ending zone like on other maps, plus you can also jump on top of the rebel frigates using a hero, which is pretty cool. And although Endor doesn't have much glitches to my knowledge, the bunker's reactor area is a death zone. And it's worth noting that the control screen has this text which I can't seem to find a translation for. The reboot does have a few boundary glitches as well, but probably the coolest being these platforms that you can only reach via a jetpack, which gives you the sickest view of the map. And on the note of cool views, The reboot's Endor and Hoth maps show us different sides of the planet we've never seen in the films. Swamp Crash Site, for example, has more boggy areas, which is where most of the animal Easter eggs are located, while the Survivors of Endor map literally takes place in the middle of a bushfire zone with small waterfalls in some areas, as well as including the Gorax lair. The regular Endor and Hoth maps are probably the most aesthetically pleasing planets in the entire game, making it feel like you're actually in the films. And although Twilight on Hoth doesn't really have a tie into the movies, it still has the best looking glaciers and ice lakes in the franchise. There's even a Tauntaun frozen in ice. In fact, there's so much more hidden Easter eggs scattered around each map in all Battlefront games. Find out more here.